Daith piercings, pros, cons, advantages, disadvantages. Going to give you 5 of each. Coming up next on Pros and Cons by a Piercer, Season 2, Episode number 1. So you better stick around. For those that are new to the channel, my name is DaVo. I'm a professional body piercer and have been since 1994. I own and operate the Axiom Body Piercing Studio, located here in Des Moines, Iowa, inside Skin Kitchen Tattoo. So when I talk to you about these things, I'm talking to you with a level of expertise that comes from being in the body piercing industry for well over 26 years. So what we're going to talk about today is the Daith piercing, also sometimes referred to as the DAF piercing. It really depends on who taught you to read and where you're located and who taught you how to pierce. Personally, I think it's a Daith. The A, it's D-A-I-T-H. So the I should make the A long, not short. At least that's what they taught me in grade school. And I'm sure that will be argued about in the comments, because that's what comments are for the most part. Anyway, so where this piercing is located and what it is it is located just above the ear canal through that fold or ridge of tissue. If you take your index finger, put it at the top of your ear, and then follow the path of the of your helix, that outer ridge, all the way down past the flap and right above the ear canal, you're going to notice there's like a bump there or a ridge. It is pierced through that. This is a modern piercing. I have not come across anything that states or any documentation that it has any tribal or indigenous people, ancient tribal, ancient culture references to this particular piercing. It is basically a modern invention. It is accredited to Erik Dakota, and supposedly he came up with it in 1992. Now, whether or not somebody had done it before that, humans, we tend to, especially with ear piercings, if it looks like it can be pierced, you could guess someone else has tried it. One of the things about this piercing is it has been pushed as a way to reduce migraines or cure them. I am very leery anytime anybody claims that a piercing is going to help you with a medical issue or health issue. What this is all based on is acupuncture. Now, acupuncture, yes, it shows that it helps certain people with certain issues, but it isn't scientifically proven to do so. So it's kind of one of those things where, is it the placebo effect or is it really physically changing something? The other issue with this is, if you do believe in acupuncture and you've had good results and you think piercing it is going to fix that, is, as a piercer, I am not trained to do acupuncture. A majority of the people out there piercing have not been either. There might be a few. I would not be surprised. However, acupuncture really relies on definitely hitting that exact spot so that they adjust the flow of blood in the area, make that impact, and that supposedly helps with migraines. When you pierce something, generally as that piercing heals, it will reroute any blood vessels, or it can change the kind of blood pressure in the area. So from a physical standpoint, if acupuncture does in fact work, that's how a piercing would work. But it relies on the fact that it'd have to be exactly on the same spot. From a scientific level, somebody had told me recently that they had come across a university study that was highly negative as far as it helping. I looked for it and I couldn't find it, or otherwise I'd be talking about it right now. The problem with any type of scientific study, or trying to prove whether or not this works or not, is how do you have a control group? How do you have people that think they are pierced but they are not pierced? Even if you put fake jewelry in there, it relies on the pressure of that jewelry, so there would be a change in the area and probably some discomfort or pain involved. So it just kind of comes down to, short of strapping them to a bed so they can't feel the area, or putting on a cone where they can't see it. I don't know how you would control and have some people that have it and some people that don't. In an anonymous online survey where 380 people responded who have Daith piercings and also experience migraines, 4.7% of them stated that they had seen a reduction in the frequency of migraine frequency. I think I said frequency twice. Of the remaining half, 4.7% stated that it had gotten worse. Their migraines had gotten worse. The rest of that half experienced little or no difference. Of the half, 49.9% of the responders did experience less severe attacks. So yeah, maybe there is something to this, but there's no way to really prove it. I'm always going to be leery of any piercer that states that any health issue can be fixed by getting a piercing. I've seen a rotation or a going through the internet that certain piercings, and this is not a new thing. I've heard it before. Certain piercings are going to suddenly make you quit smoking. They're going to help with weight loss, etc. There is no scientific way to state that any of this works. Don't believe it. You can try it if you think it's going to work. The worst that could happen is you end up with a piercing that you can enjoy for the rest of your life. With that out of the way, let's put the soapbox away and talk about what you guys probably came here for, the pros and the cons. We're going to start off with the pros. Pro number one, this is a very unique and elegant piercing. It is one of those piercings that, until the whole migraine thing happened, was fairly rare. It doesn't change the fact that this piercing is unlike any other one. It just has a very distinct look. Number two, talking a little bit more about anatomy, it is a piercing that fits really well into the anatomy. There's something about having that circle and the inside of a circle that just looks really well with this particular piercing. It just fits. It looks like it belongs there. Number three, this piercing has a long history of healing fairly easily. Obviously, results may vary due to health or tolerance for particular piercing, but this piercing usually does heal with very little issues if taken care of properly and done correctly. Number four, this is something we really don't talk about, but you kind of have the same effect from with conch piercings. Because of the location, it is more inside the ear and is less likely to come in contact with bedding, clothing, and pretty much everything else. It has a lot less contact than other piercings. Partly, I mean, if you want to get a good example, just take your palm, rest it against your ear. Notice how much of the structure of the ear comes in contact with your hand. One of the things that doesn't come in contact is where your Daith would be located out in most conches. So it kind of isolates it, keeps away from things, which can usually make the piercing heal a little faster with less problems and be less likely to have issues. Number five, there is a huge variety of different types of jewelry that you can put in this piercing. Mainly from, I think the main source of this comes from the migraine thing and the popularity growing so quickly. But there is a large variety, everything from very simplistic all the way up to very elegant and detailed pieces. You have a lot to choose from those two styles, either curved barbells or rings. Clickers, etc. Lots of stuff to put in there. Now, with that out of the way, let's move on to the cons, the disadvantages, the things we do not like or are bad. The first one, number one, would be this can affect whether or not you can use earbuds or, if you're in the medical profession, stethoscopes. Basically, it is located right there at the entrance of the ear canal. It is going to have pressure against it if you put either of those things in there. Results vary. I've had some clients that seem to have no issues with it, while others, it's just impossible without pain, discomfort, or a healed piercing suddenly flaring up and having issues. So take that in mind. And this is especially during the healing process. After it heals, you may still additionally have issues. Number two, you may not have the anatomy for this piercing. This piercing relies heavily on you having a pronounced and easy to get to area to be pierced. That varies greatly from person to person. Ears are one of those things that is different greatly, even from one side to the other, and may or may not be able to be pierced if you don't have the correct anatomy. Number three, you cannot sleep on this piercing. Even though it is more isolated than other piercings, that pressure, constant moving, and etc. will cause issues. You need to sleep on your other side or on your back, or figure out some way to elevate the jewelry and the piercing off the bed, usually by using something like a U-shaped travel pillow. Number 4, this is a piercing that's very difficult to monitor during the healing process. Because of its location and the fact that you can't see it straight on, it can be very difficult to know exactly what's going on with this piercing. Usually it'll require having it checked occasionally by a friend or partner, or many of my clients will take pictures with their mobile phone. It's just because of its location, it's really hard to see when an issue comes up or if it's healing correctly or if there's a problem. Last one, number 5, you are probably going to need assistance when changing the jewelry. Not only because it's in such a tight spot, it's difficult to bend or chain or screw on balls or what have you. It can be very hard to even start or see those entrance and exit holes. It is definitely one of those piercings that, especially the first year or so, I would suggest getting changed by your piercer. Okay, with that out of the way, with the cons out of the way, let's move on to things you should probably look for when trying to choose who's going to pierce you and getting the piercing. Some things you should consider. The first thing being is the piercer that you choose should have a lot of experience with this piercing. They should have a number of examples in their portfolio that of healed piercings, not piercings that were done and then a photo was taken 2 minutes after it was done and cleaned up, but actual healed piercings. The next thing is your piercer should give you a consultation that involves aftercare, the risks involved with this piercing, answer any questions you may have, and assess your anatomy to see whether or not it can be pierced or not. He should also talk a little bit about what your responsibilities are going to be as far as healing the piercing. Now let's talk about the piercing experience itself. This piercing is usually done freehand. It is not done with forceps or anything like that. It's usually done freehand into either a cork or a needle receiving tube. And then the needle receiving tube is used to guide the needle, the sharp tip of the needle, out of the area so that it can put without scratching anything else. Usually it's not an extremely painful piercing as much as it is uncomfortable. Sometimes that bending and flexing that's involved with getting the needle out of the way so you can put the jewelry in can be very uncomfortable, can add a lot of pressure to that rook area on the top of your ear and just on the piercing itself. Some piercers will use curved needles or bend needles, especially for this particular piercing. That varies from piercer to piercer. It's going to be what technique works best for them. One other thing that's going to happen possibly during the piercing experience is there might be some bleeding. The problem with that is that it can bleed into the ear canal because it's right there. I do suggest that if that does happen, let your piercer know that it's happening so that they can adjust you so that it's not flowing in there. It can be a pain in the butt if it gets stuck in there and causes some type of plug. Usually, even if it does, your body tends to flush out your ear canal pretty well and can push stuff out, but it's just not something you want to do unless you absolutely have to. Now let's talk a little bit about healing. Average healing time on this one is roughly 8 to 12 weeks. It varies from person to person. Everybody's a little different. And when I say healing time, that's when it's most susceptible to infection. During that period of time, I would suggest clean it twice a day with sterile saline solution. Personally, like Nelmed piercing aftercare spray or wound wash spray. Must practice cross-contamination prevention involving things like avoiding contact with unclean objects, washing your hands, no oral contact, no swimming, keeping your environment clean, and keeping things away from the piercing. Common sense stuff your mom should have taught you. For the first 3 to 5 days with this piercing, it's not uncommon to see redness, discolorization, heat, where it feels very inflamed or feverish. It's also not uncommon to see maybe a little bit of slight bleeding, and, of course, inflammation. This is all a reaction to the actual trauma of the piercing itself. This will usually fade in about 5 days. If it doesn't, or it seems like it's getting worse, you should probably contact your piercer. And as I mentioned earlier, the piercing should be monitored on a regular basis, and you should have someone that's willing to volunteer to do that. Like I said, it's difficult to see this piercing, so either that or taking video or a photo of the piercing with your mobile device is probably a good idea. Now let's talk about living with the piercing. What's it like after you heal the piercing? First off, the jewelry should pretty much be left in at all times. This is like many piercings. it's best just to leave the jewelry in. On some people, especially if you're really healthy, it can close in a matter of a few hours, and nothing is more frustrating than not being able to get the jewelry back in. You should avoid trauma, pressure, etc. to the piercing even after it heals. Be cautious of it. Avoid things that come in contact with it or possibly could snag the jewelry or cause some other issue. As far as earbuds, try them. If they're uncomfortable, don't use them. If you might want to try switching to a different piece of jewelry. Some of my clients have had more luck with the curved barbells, being a little bit more comfortable with the earbuds. But yeah, it's just right there. And the pressure of that silicone going outward that's on those buds usually causes issues. And if it feels uncomfortable to even wear them for, 10 or 15 minutes, it's probably just not a good idea. Listen to your body. It'll generally point you in the right direction, at least when it comes to piercings. Lastly, let's talk a little bit about what would happen if you abandon the piercing. Maybe you're thinking about trying this to cure migraines, and you want to know, what would happen if you just take the jewelry out. It'll close fairly rapidly, depending on how long the piercing jewelry has been in. As far as scarring and etc., you'll have probably 2 small indentation scars on the top and bottom. Usually not a lot of scarring, and it is hardly noticeable and will fade over time. That's all I have to say about Daith piercings, pros and cons of, and everything else. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, please give me a thumbs up. Let me know that you liked it, because we like it when you like it. If you enjoyed this and would like to see other videos involving body piercing and tattooing with a focus on education, click that subscription and make sure you punch that notification bell so that you're notified every single time we post something. If you like merch, you like swag, or you need to buy something for those that love body art that are on your Christmas list, check out our merch store. Link is in the description. Till next time, here's hoping all your piercings heal with ease and without a single issue. And if you're in the Des Moines, Iowa area, I hope to see you for your body piercing needs in the future. Have a good day, everybody. Take care of yourself. Take care of one another. Stay safe. Stay healthy. And we'll see you next week.